Our final speaker for today is Rabbi Yehuda Levin. He is the founder of Congregation of Bakshi Hashim Synagogue, which means those who seek the Lord. It's located in the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York. Rabbi Levin has been a cultural warrior in New York City and beyond for over 30 years. At the age of 24, he delivered his first talk at the March for Life in Washington, D.C. And in the past 32 years, he has delivered an address there 29 times. At the age of 30, he ran for U.S. Congress, and in that run actually caused a powerful Democrat to remove his sponsorship of pro-homosexual legislation. A year later, he ran for mayor of New York City on the Right to Life platform, and that whole race made headlines in major newspapers of New York City, and as a result, the mayor, Mayor Koch, could not avoid but participate in a debate on the issue of life. And he actually wrote about that, by the way, in his book called Politics. In 1991, Rabbi Levin was one of 6 people who was featured prominently in the book called Culture Wars, and there is no question he has definitely cemented his identification as a culture warrior. So will you please, this afternoon, welcome with me Rabbi Yehuda Levin.
May the words, the utterances of my mouth, the thoughts of my heart be pleasing to you. You're my rock, my salvation. I have to ask a question to everybody here before I begin. There were 157 or so rallies today across the country. All of them are saying, in different tones, different contexts, the same thing. Here I have the audacity to be different than everyone else and say things that might offend people here. In the interest of the truth, the full truth and nothing but the truth. The truth has to hurt. And so with your permission, do not take offense. I apologize in advance that I'm here to speak to you today in the prophetic fashion. My great-grandparents' name is Levin. My progenitors served for 800 years in 2 temples of God. My great-great-great-grandfather was called upon by Moses after the Jews sinned with the golden calf. Moses came down with the tablets and he cried out, "Who is unto God unto me?" And my tribe, the tribe of Levi, they were the ones who stood up. They took on their fathers and their brothers. So you have to understand, I was invited here, and I take this as an invitation not just from Mrs. Manley, Mr. Orr, and the good people of Huntsville gathered here today. More importantly, I'm invited by God. God doesn't want me to compromise. My mother-in-law, if she wouldn't be well, she bears the mark of Auschwitz on her 86-year-old hand. She was on the book, The Exodus. Some of you might remember having read that book. The blood that runs in my veins is as a survivor of grounds, inquisitions, holocausts, but fulfilling the mandate of being a nation of priests and holy people, living for 2,000 years as third level, quote unquote, citizens of Europe and many other countries. I come from a different perspective, my dear friends. We've heard, America, America, God shed his grace on thee. But do we deserve this grace? Do we deserve this grace? I'm going to challenge you now in the next few minutes. You think that the worst problem we have here is Obama and his minions and his anti-God allies putting a gun to our heads to pay for somebody's contraceptions of abortion or abortions? You really think that that's why we should be gathered here today? Let me tell you something. Let me give you a moral challenge. Which is worse? When we'll stand in front of God and he'll say, your taxpayer dollars wanted to pay for this, you pay for this. We'll be able to say, God, they put a gun to our head. Or will God say to us, we were the majority of people when the first speaker, I think it's Dr. Heiss, told us about a story I've been following for 5 years. It's one of many, of the New Mexican photographer that is forced to genuflect to the militant homosexual complex, throw his God and his values under the bus, and pay for that privilege. Excuse my language, but where the hell, because that's where many of us here are going, are we going to march on that judge? Is there going to be 50,000 people standing up and charging into the courthouse and saying, for God's sake, enough? Or are we going to nod our heads and say, it's terrible, we're losing our liberties, and make nice speeches and go back home and eat sushi? We've been doing that for 40 years. You want to know something, my friends? I don't think there's one speaker in 157 rallies who's saying and is going to say what I say. You figure out why. I'll tell you the answer if I have enough time. But let me tell you something. The profound philosopher Pogo, that's right, and it's not a joke, he explains what's really going on here. You know what Pogo said, right? We found the enemy, we met the enemy, and it's us. Here's the part I have to apologize for if I'm offending you, but I gotta tell you the truth. I can't really apologize, because the blood that runs in my veins is the blood of the prophets of ancient Israel. Moses, the giver of the law, said, God, another bit, and the Jewish Israelites will stone me. Religious leadership, where I come from, and throughout the prophet and the Bibles, they didn't have big edifices. They didn't hobnob and go to hotels for big meetings. They didn't have leaders. When I came last to Alabama to support Judge Roy Moore, they didn't have leaders of major multi-million Southern religious organizations saying, I'm a bit in disagreement with Judge Moore for putting up the Ten Commandments. He's going against the law. That's religion? That's the man who speaks for 40 million of us? Think about it. The enemy is us, and the problem is we have been acquiescent for the last 40 years as our religious leaders have become politicians, and our politicians have become religious leaders. The religious leader in the big edifice And some of them have even been praised here recently. Let's see. Dare I say this? How many people will I lose from the pews? Dare I say that? And then, the new Pope, Obama, since he's not facing any real religious opposition, because when was the last time one of these clergymen got arrested except for simply